NieR Automata tells the story of a future Earth decimated by alien machines and the androids that fight them. With its every frame, it forces players to question, what is humanity? What is life? Why is it precious? What would you do to protect it? And why? So let's talk bushes. It likely seems unusual that you've come to watch a video about superpowered androids, flying machines, and the destruction of Earth, only to hear about leafy greens. However, if you stick with me, I hope to provide little insight into this spectacular game. Whenever you steer a character through a bush, they stumble. They never quite fall, but each time they come close. The first time this happened, I thought, how funny that they've animated this. This is a serious attention to detail. The designers have thought hard about how you might interact with the environment. However, the more I thought about this inclusion, the more I realised this simple addition has a wider impact. This short animation carries the message of the game. The animation for each character is similar, but different. This difference shows us that they are distinct individuals. After all, if we were to fall into a bush, we would react in a different way. These androids aren't human, yet it's very human to stumble, isn't it? I mean, we all stumble, whether that be physically or metaphorically. This might be literally falling over or having a moment of crisis in your life. To struggle is a natural part of life, and it can be seen across the animal kingdom and in modern society. And these androids, they also stumble, in the way that they fall through a bush. If we were to ignore the rest of the game, we can gain an insight into what makes something human and living through this simple stumble animation. It's a trait that we share with the androids. However, does sharing traits mean that we are the same? Does it make them alive? Regardless of whatever else the game tells us, does something that's made of ones and zeros stumble? Wouldn't a machine or a robot or something that wasn't living just plough through a bush? Would it understand the concept of stumbling in the first place? If it was to fall through a bush, wouldn't it just get stuck? Surely it wouldn't react in a way that resembles a human, would it? While NieR Automata's androids appear human, they do also perform many inhuman feats. And yet, we both struggle with bushes. Does this fragility on the androids' part show their humanity? I mean, humanity has done some amazing things. We've created, we've made art, we've built, we've discovered so much. And yet we are frail creatures susceptible to disease, injury and death, like any other life form. The same is true for the androids. They might display their fragility in a different way, but it is still there. You wouldn't say that a dog is any less alive than a human just because dogs are able to hear things we can't hear or do things that we can't. Because at the end of the day, the androids, they can die. They can have their consciousness removed from existence, contract viruses, experience love, joy and hatred. And each of these things is human. I mean, why is it that they have trouble with a bush but can defeat machines that decimate landscapes, easily survive re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, and manage a myriad of other fantastic achievements? Just because they are different from us doesn't make them any less alive. Okay, at this point you might be thinking, point proven. And that these androids are clearly living creatures, powerful beyond our means, but living. They might be artificial constructs, but they clearly show human characteristics, and that's life, right? They don't need to fully replicate our characteristics to be a living, conscious creature. I refer you back to my dog example from earlier. They might be formed in our image, but that doesn't make them us. I mean, we evolved from apes, but we don't share all of our attributes with them. We are different. What we can't forget, though, is that these are androids at the end of the day, and they did not evolve. They are artificial, forced creations, given life by people, not nature. Other than through biological reproduction, is it possible for one creature to create another? How do you define the self and consciousness? For people, our brain is as much who we are as our physical characteristics. Everybody is different, and this difference defines us. This can include different genetics, ways of thinking, memories, and personalities. A major part of the game's narrative focuses on the fact that the android's black box is essentially their brain, as it contains their memories, their self. It goes to great lengths to show that you can replicate the body, but not the mind. If a person is the sum of their experience, then surely the same is true for the androids. They learn and adapt just like us. Is this life, or is this programming? What's the difference between the two? What is the difference between the androids and something like targeted adverts? These adverts learn and shape themselves to their goal, to sell you stuff. And the android's goal is to defeat the machine, so they must learn and shape themselves to complete their mission. Does this mean that an advertising algorithm is alive? I really, really hope not. The androids are made to fight the machines, so they already have a defined purpose. They have a reason to live. They don't need to seek meaning in their lives, they already have it. However, is this different from slavery, or living to fill obligations and expectations? They might be designed and programmed to fight the machines, but that is a forced purpose. Given the choice, a real choice, I doubt many would still choose the same path. In fact, one of the many endings for the game explores this very idea. NieR Automata has many messages, one of which is that hatred begets hatred. It creates a cycle of destruction. For the androids, they lose comrades and machines, and this only adds fuel to their predisposed hatred for the machines, and fuels a further conflict, where they only continue to lose more friends and companions. This assumes, though, that they have real emotions and can feel things like hate and seek revenge, and that this isn't simply their programming giving a response to a situation. However, when you think about it, is there truly a difference between the two? Could it be that the androids are programmed to stumble through a bush to make them feel more human? Is this a fake sense of fragility? These same androids survive intense fights that leave the environment around them in ruins, so why would they be even remotely affected by a bush? Surely the bush would just be vaporized by the force of them walking through it. The game's narrative needs the androids to awaken to a sense of humanity. But what if this is also a construct? Is it a hidden piece of code just waiting to activate and trick the androids into believing that they have control over anything, and they aren't just slaves to their coding? These same parallels can be drawn to humanity. Why is our existence so easily snuffed when we can do amazing things? We can build, create, and fight, and live with such force, and yet we are still so fragile. If we were to try and walk through a bush, we would struggle, due to our own physical limitations. However, the androids do not have the same physical limitations as us. So why do they struggle? On top of this, they struggle in the same fashion with each encounter. The animation is the same regardless of the angle or speed with which you collide with a bush. This gives us potentially further evidence that this isn't a genuine struggle, but one created to give the pretense of humanity. If this is a fake response, does that throw all of their responses into question? Can they have free thought when their entire being was created by somebody else? When you think about it though, isn't this close to things like brainwashing, learnt beliefs, and the fact that other people change your perspective of the world? When you really think about it, we aren't quite so different. People are influenced by an uncountable number of things throughout their lives. Your parents will have shaped and formed you into the person they think you should be, and while you can fight against this, some things will be embedded too deeply. How is this different from the androids? They might have had things entered with the expressed desire for a specific outcome rather than it being an inherited trait, but is there truly a difference? Are we slaves to our own encounters in the same way that the androids are slaves to their core programming? We are influenced and shaped by those around us. This might be either explicitly or implicitly. I suppose that the major difference is that we can try and control our programming throughout our lives, whereas the androids have it from the start. When it comes down to it though, how different is programming from human DNA? Isn't that just biological programming? Certain traits are predetermined, but it doesn't define us. The same is true for the androids. They often rebel against what they should do, fighting their conditioning, and they never stop falling through those bushes. Throughout the story, they continually grow, change, challenge, and fight for their purpose to exist. Their hatred for the machines is bred from them being told that that's what they should be doing and they should fight them. However, the likes of Pascal and her village show that this isn't always the case. This again draws parallels back to our world. If you think, not so long ago, racism was a done thing. People were demonized and society was told that they were terrible just by their very existence. And yet, they were just people trying to live their lives in the best way that they knew. Our programming might not be the same as theirs, but it still exists. We should continuously question our perspective on the world. Where do our thoughts and opinions come from? In an age of media consumption, how many of your opinions are actually your own? Now, I'm not going to get all fake news on you, but it's worth considering that everything anybody says has a piece of them embedded into it. This applies to everything. TV shows, films, YouTube videos, articles, the news, even video games have parts of the people who made them, who created them, somewhere inside. True objectivity does not exist, except potentially from a machine. Some irony there for you. Culture and society don't exist in a vacuum. It all comes from somewhere. The next generation picks up the behaviours, traits and beliefs of the one before. Some will challenge this, but many will not. Nobody programmed these people to act this way, but is there a difference between teaching the next generation and creating a machine that can think and feel as a human might? The androids might not be human, but they share... The androids may not be human, but they share many of our traits. The androids may not be human, but they share many of our traits. This may have been done to make them feel more connected to our species and mean that they want to fight, struggle, and die for a reason supposedly set out by humanity. And yet they think and feel in a way that feels counter to this purpose. They have relationships, emotions, goals. Stumbling through bushes is evidence that their creators wanted them to have flaws, and flaws in and of themselves reveal a humanity within them. So does the bush theory prove that they are living beings with a consciousness? Or does it serve as evidence that they are nothing more than complex machines, no different from a high-tech toaster, responding to stimuli and giving a pre-programmed response? We do know that if they lose their black boxes, then their current self ceases to exist. However, is that just a collection of events and memories put together to give the impression of something more than a machine? Honestly, who can tell? You can take guesses, interpret things in your own way, but can you ever know for sure? This game continues to perplex me on many levels. Before playing NieR Automata, I thought I had a pretty clear idea of what was alive and what was human and what was machine, and a lot of those preconceptions have been challenged. You might go through a similar experience. This might be triggered because of a simple bush stumble animation, or something else entirely. I can't tell you what it means to be alive, but I can tell you that NieR Automata shows us that there's a massive grey area, because at the end of the day, we all struggle with bushes.